Hi, my name is Cynthia Kilpatrick, and I am excited to tell you about my project for our PLC in 2015-2016. I was in the synchronous learning group, and my project is called Faces or Fingers, Building Communities in Online TESOL Courses. So in this project, we examined the effectiveness of different synchronous formats in an online TESOL class. Specifically, we looked at face chats and finger chats. So face chats are video chats or webinars, kind of the standard in online classes, and finger chats are with your fingers instead of your faces. Basically, you are typing responses or you're typing questions. You're still all there at the same time, but you're not having to worry about what you look like or what you're wearing or the technical difficulties that come along with having multiple people on video at once. So just to preview the results a little bit, overall, students were a little bit resistant to doing these synchronous sessions every week, but pretty quickly we got responses that indicated that students were actually really looking forward to the synchronous finger chats, and they were really feeling like they were working. Attendance and participation were higher, and the degree of discussion and involvement was just well beyond what we saw in any of our face formats. So to give you a little bit of background on the class, this is one of two different required TESOL methods courses that are that students must take in order to get a certificate in TESOL. The companion course to this class went fully online in fall 15, but prior to fall 15, both of these classes were completely face-to-face in a traditional classroom setting. In fall 15, when the companion course went fully online, this class that I did the project in became a blended course. All of the content delivery and material and assignments was all online, but we met once a week face-to-face so that students could talk about issues or problems and discuss different things related to what they were learning in the class. In spring of 16, the class went fully online for the first time, and here was where we really wanted to be able to help students find ways to build communities, because in the past, when we had run synchronous sessions, both in the blended class as well as in the fully online class in the fall, we saw that there was relatively low attendance at synchronous sessions. We saw that there was poor participation. Even students who showed up didn't always participate in any way. And there was a little bit of an unclear focus. Students thought, if they were face-to-face with their professor, that it was time to ask questions about the homework. And so it became more of an online office hour than a content delivery or community building session. However, the problem with that is that it's really important to develop this feeling of community between the students in the class as they become TESOL professionals. And here we're talking about TESOL professionals who will probably be teaching adults. They may be the only trained ESL professional in the organization that they're working in. So in a K-12 situation where you might have multiple teachers teaching the same content area in the building, you can always run to one of them and say, how do you teach this? Or what do you do about students like this? But for adult teachers of ESL, that's not always the situation. So they really need to have a network of colleagues outside of their classroom building that they can call on for help when they need it. This is especially important for the students enrolled in the class. They're brand new to teaching, and they're having to do a practical teaching application as a requirement of the class, and they have lots of questions. They have questions about classroom management, they have questions about content, they have questions about language learners, and they really need to be able to talk with other people about that. So in face-to-face classes, we spend a lot of time talking about these issues and allowing students to have Q&A sessions about what they're learning and how important it is. And as we move these classes online, we don't want to lose that. So our question is, well, how do we do this effectively? So what we investigated in this project were some very specific questions. We asked, how will students respond to different synchronous formats? So face formats, which is video, finger group formats, which is Facebook groups, and finger chat formats, which is instant messaging within a group. Specifically, we looked at how attendance, participation, and student response differs in these three different types of synchronous formats. And overall, we're just asking the question, will finger formats build community at least as effectively as faces formats? Because faces formats are the gold standard currently in online classes. But we had reason to believe that they didn't build community as effectively as we would like them to. So here's what we did. We took all of the students in the class and we asked them when they were available. We gave them multiple different options for synchronous sessions, and we said, which ones of these can you attend? And they marked all the ones that they would be available for on a regular basis. Then we assigned a group leader for each of those groups. And in this case, this semester, because the class was relatively small, the group leaders that we talked about at the beginning were the TA for the class, who is a grad student who has experience in TESOL, a grad student currently getting a master's in TESOL who is taking the classes in elective, and the instructor of the class, which was me. The leaders of the groups reported attendance and assessed participation each week so that we could get an idea of attendance and participation across the course of the semester. The students were required to attend 10 weekly sessions. They were supposed to always attend the same group, though sometimes students had issues, as students always do. Work schedules were unpredictable or something came up and they couldn't attend their particular group session. So they were at least a couple times given options to attend a different session. Also, they were given options to do some asynchronous participation. So if a student had to work during the time of the synchronous session, they could go in, they could read the post and they could comment on the post or in the messages, or they could watch the webinar to gain partial points for that. In addition to this, after each session, the students had to write a response and they had to tell us what went well and what didn't go so well. They also had to tell us, what particular questions do you have about the next topic? And this was really important because what we saw in previous FACES formats is that students didn't always ask questions. They really felt like it was more teacher-centered, and they didn't feel like they needed to jump in. They just wanted the teacher to talk the whole time. And that was not the point for us of these synchronous sessions. We really wanted community building and not lecture. And so they had to ask 3 questions about the next topic for the following week. And then we pulled all those questions together and we posted them for the group leaders before the session started so that the group leaders could ask those same questions. So students, even if they weren't willing to put their question forward, they still got their question answered during the session. So what did we find? Well, overall, in terms of attendance, we found that attendance was at least as good or possibly better in finger formats than FACES formats. I can't give you hard numbers here. We're still completing this, so we haven't finished our 10 sessions. But at the current moment, what we're seeing with finger formats is that students are attending well above 50% of the time. For many students, they have attended all but one of the sessions we've had so far, and we've done 8 sessions. In previous FACES formats, we have had much lower attendance, often less than 50% of students attending. So attendance seems to be at least as good, but I really think it's probably a lot better in finger formats than FACES formats. In addition, we're seeing that participation in finger formats is much more productive, where we're getting active student-centered discussion. So students, especially I think when they saw their own questions there, got really involved. They posted responses to other students, they asked additional questions, they followed up, and they got really involved. It was relatively rare for students to sit through a finger format session without ever participating. But in FACES formats, both this semester FACES formats as well as FACES formats in previous semesters, this was actually quite common. And then student responses were generally very positive. Several mentioned that they felt it was really helping their teaching, and they all got answers to the questions that they were asking, even though they didn't have to ask them themselves. So big conclusions that we have from this are that finger formats built community more effectively than FACES formats in the class that we're teaching. There were fewer technical issues, they were more student-centered and less teacher-focused, and students could get to know each other and build rapport with other students in the group, as well as with their leader, who always had more TESOL experience than they did. This helps them build community because they're building rapport and they're building connections that they can continue once they get out of this classroom. This doesn't mean that finger formats are always a better choice. So FACES formats are potentially much better for content delivery and lecture. Students commented on the finger formats that they multitasked more. So I don't think they were paying attention 100% of the time, even though they were actively participating for much of the session. They also, in FACES formats, seem to expect a teacher-focused session, and if that's their expectation, then that might be the prime time to do lecture or content delivery. As we move forward, and we'll be continuing this next year in these online classes and seeing how it goes, things to think about are more consistent reminders to help with participation, a clear tutorial for Facebook groups and chats. We thought they would know, they didn't all, considering group sizes and what's workable, who the group leaders will be and how much they participate, and additional ways to build community in online courses. If you have thoughts on that, I would love to talk to you. My email, my office number, and my lab number are on here. And if you ever want to chat about faces or fingers sessions in synchronous classes, I would love to hear from you. Thanks.